Hi there, creative. Have you ever wanted to kind of spice up your lettering a bit? Well, today I have a really cool tutorial. I am going to show you how to create some cactus inspired lettering. My name is Shannon and I am a member of the Pigeon Letters design team, and I will be sharing tutorials with you guys here on the Pigeon Letters YouTube channel and the blog. And be sure to check out the blog post for the full list of supplies that I'm using for this tutorial. So once you have your letters all sketched out, we can then start drawing our cacti. And I'm going to be taking my inspiration from the Pigeon Letters Botanical Line Drawing Cacti and Succulents book, because there are so many cool step-by-step tutorials on how to draw some cacti. And I just went through the book and picked out a few that I felt fit the letters. So for the letter C, this one that I'm doing is called the Snow White Cactus, and it has a really beautiful flower at the top, and that's what I started with. And then I'm going to just follow the steps in the book and use that to form the letter. So I started with the center of the flower, and then I added some petals. And the next step in the book is to add the dots and the spines. So that is what I'm going to do all around this letter. So after I was finished with that, I then moved on to my second letter. And for this one, I am taking my inspiration from the toothpick cactus. Of course, you can just stick with one style of letter. There is nothing wrong with that. I've done that a few times before and it looks equally as amazing. But one thing I love to do is kind of just push things. So this is actually the first time that I attempted this piece. So I wasn't sure how any of these were going to look together. It was just a fun experiment, and it just is a lot better to just go with the flow than to worry too much about, messing up or anything like that. So I am doing the toothpick cactus. I started with the outline and then I added just some separations in the middle of the letter, and the next step was to just add some dots in the middle of each section. So after I added those dots, then the next step was to just add the needles, and these ones were a lot longer than the ones in the Snow White cactus. The next style cactus that I'm doing is called the Indian fig. So I started by doing the outline of the letter C, and then just add in a few just smaller cacti at the top of the letter. You can just stack them up, and the more you add, you just make them smaller as you go up. And to balance this letter a little bit, I decided just to add a few smaller cacti to the bottom of the letter C. Then to complete it, I added some dots all around the letter. Now we're on to the letter T, and the inspiration for this comes from the moon cactus. And I started by doing the bottom of the T with some very jagged lines. Then I was a little bit unsure of how to approach the top of the T. In the end, I decided to kind of treat it as though it was the same shape but just horizontally. So I did similar jagged lines to form the top of the T, and then I added in the little flower at the top. And then to finish the letter T, I just added a quick, messy, kind of rough outline all around the letter. So for the letter U, I decided to do this like the Harambe clubfoot cactus. And I started by drawing the outside of the U. Then I added the leaves at the top. And to complete it, I just added some little spikes all around the letter. And finally, we are at the last letter. For this one, I wanted to do the letter S in a similar style as the bunny ears cactus. So I started with the outline and then I added the top cacti onto the S. And to complete it, I added some dots. So once you're finished with the outlines of the letters, it's now time to start adding your color. So you can grab whatever type of paint or markers you want to use. I am using the Caring Brush Marker Pro, and that's just what I want to use because the colors are already there and I don't have to mix any colors. So I've chosen 3 shades of green, a bright color, a mid-tone color, as well as a darker color. And I'm starting with my lightest color first, and then I am going in with that mid-tone green and I'm adding it along my shadow areas. And the shadow area is just where I want my shadows to be on this letter, and that is on the right side and the bottom of each part of the letter. So I've added that, and then I'm using my paintbrush and a little bit of water to help me blend those 2 colors together. Now, another reason why I like using the Caring markers is that these remain wet for quite some time. So even after I've blended these colors together, the paper is still a little wet. So I'm going to go in with my darkest shade of green now and just add an even darker shadow to those shadow areas. And because the paper is wet, the ink will just start to bleed on its own and it will blend into the other colors. And then I'm going to allow this to dry completely. Now I don't want the colors to bleed into the next letter, so I'm going to wait until this first letter is completely dry before I work on the one next to it. So I will move from this C and go to the one on the other side. Again, I started with my lighter color and then added my mid-tone green along the edges. And while the colors are still wet on the paper, I'm going to use my darkest green to add in the deeper shadow color. And this is a technique that I'm going to use to do all the other letters. I'm just alternating them so that I don't have any colors bleeding from one letter to another. So after the letter C was completely dried, I went back in and I did the A, and I also added some pink to the flower to really make it pop. And one other type of shadow that I added was to the inside of the letter T and the letter A. I just used the darker green while the color was still wet to add a line of color just to show a little bit of dimension for each section inside of these cacti letters. So you're going to wait for all of these letters to dry. If you have a heat gun, you can use that to help speed things up. Then you're going to use your gray marker just to add a shadow on the outside of each letter. And finally, I used my white paint pen to add some highlights to the left and upper side of each letter. If you want to take things a little further, you can also add some splatters. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial and learning how to make these really cute cacti letters. And if you do try this tutorial. I would really love to see how your cacti look. So please tag me at by Shannon Lane on Instagram so that I can see your creations.